Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. This week, we will visit the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs in the city of Hebron. South of Jerusalem, along the path of the Patriarchs, lies one of the most sacred and ancient cities in the land of Israel, Hebron. This city is where history, prophecy, and promise intertwine. It is here that Abraham purchased the first piece of the promised land, a land that would become the inheritance of his descendants forever. Hebron is the eternal resting place of our patriarchs and matriarchs, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. For generations, Hebron has been a city of pilgrimage, devotion, and resilience. It is a living testament to the unbroken connection between the Jewish people and their ancestral homeland. I'm David Sussman, and in this episode of Land of the Bible, we'll walk through the sacred streets of Hebron, uncover its rich biblical heritage, and see how its legacy continues to shape the present. Join me on this extraordinary journey.
Okay, we're here in one of the most special and beautiful places in the world, tomb of the mamas and papas, tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron. If you haven't been there, that means you haven't touched the tomb of Abraham. You haven't connected yet. This is all about connectivity. It's all about connection because it's Hebron from the word chaver, Hebron, chaver, which means friendship, together. People used to call this place Tomb of the Patriarchs, but the truth is it's a big mistake. This is the only site in the world that has both mamas and papas. And these mamas and papas gave birth to the Jewish nation. And they're all buried in one place. Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. It's a place of couples. It's a place of love. So Hebron is for lovers. And the star of Hebron is this building called the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs, in Hebrew, Marat HaMachpelah, the Cave of Machpelah. Chapter 23 of the book of Genesis tells us the whole story. Abraham came to Hebron, he lived here, and he negotiated with the Hittites for a plot of land to bury his beloved wife, Sarah. We see an amazing edifice. That edifice was not around in the time of Abraham. This edifice is 2,000 years old, which is actually halfway between where we are today and when the original purchase was made. This building, this giant mammoth building, is 2,000 years old. It was made and built and designed by King Herod, a Jewish king, and he was a master builder, maybe one of the greatest builders in the ancient world. And today it is considered the world's oldest structure that is continuously serving what it was intended to serve from the onset, which is a public place to honor the forefathers and mothers. That's what we're doing here. We're honoring the forefathers and mothers, the founders of the Bible, the people who began Jewish peoplehood. It's all right here behind me. Let's do it. The Jewish people were banned from praying inside this building from the year 1267 till 1967. 700 years. 700 years. So we decided to leave town. Just joking, we never left town. We kept praying right here. This area was called the seventh step. There were 7 steps over here, and that's where the Muslims allowed us to pray. You couldn't go past the 7th step. If you did, you would get a slap in the face or a butt of the rifle. You get in a lot of trouble. Well, there was a little kid in the 20s, and he was known as Gandhi. It was a joke name because he was so skinny. And he ran up the stairs, a little Jewish kid. He runs up the stairs here, and a Muslim guard slaps him so hard that he literally rolls down the staircase. Well, the last laugh was his. In 1967, he came back as the commander of Central Command. His name was Rechavam Ze'evi, and he went back to that staircase and he lined it with dynamite and he blew it up. He said, there's no more Jews that are going to be humiliated at this site. Today, the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs is adorned by the flags of Israel because of Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. We're back, baby. Baruch Hashem, thank God. He has brought us back, and we're celebrating with the founders of the peoplehood, with the God above, with the society that's living here, and with this amazing tomb bedecked in the flag of Israel. You're welcome to join anytime. We see this big plaza. It's a very beautiful plaza, and it reminds us of the Western Wall because the same guy built it, Herod, right? He built the Western Wall as part of the great temple in Jerusalem, the Second Temple. Well, this was built just a little bit before that. We enter through a kind of archway, and finally we are in the original building. When we look down at the floor, what we find is that some of the floor is actually the original floor that Herod put into the building. We're going to go into the first room, and that's the room of Abraham and Sarah. That's the original couple. That's the power couple. All right, Abraham and Sarah, they're the ones that give birth to the idea of serving the one God, of monotheism. And they start to preach it, to teach it. But inside, we see these little roomlets. And these roomlets are the housing of the memorial structure, the sepulcher of Abraham and Sarah. That's not where the actual tombs are. And that's why we call it tomb marker. The tombs of the forefathers and mothers are underneath the building. The building is like a big box on top of it. And the point of the building is that when you come into the building, you touch the building, it touches the tombs below. And therefore you're connected. Just like a headstone would make you feel connected to the tombs below, so too this big building is meant to give you a connection to the tombs below. The next room, it's the room of Isaac and Rebekah. It's actually a very beautiful room. It's a very large room. And there you could see in the room the two markers of Isaac and Rebekah facing one another. Finally, we have the hall of Jacob and Leah. Now, Leah, she has a sister named Rachel. She was also the wife of Jacob, but she's not buried here. Rachel's buried in the tomb of Rachel in Bethlehem, as the Bible records it 3,500 years ago. It's still there today. Leah's a very important matriarch. She gave birth to Levi, where the priests come from, and she also gave birth to Judah, where the name of the Jewish people comes from, and also where King David comes from in the Davidic dynasty. So that's Leah. Across from her is Jacob. Jacob has another name. Do you remember what that name is? Oh yeah, it's Israel. That's it, Israel. Israel's Jacob. He's the father of the 12 tribes, and there he is, buried in Hebron. In fact, the end of the book of Genesis records how Jacob is dying in Egypt. And he says to his sons, don't bury me in Egypt, bury me in Hebron, in the heart of the homeland of the Jewish people, the heart of the Holy Land. Bury me there. That's where they buried Abraham and Sarah. That's where they buried Isaac and Rebekah. That's where I buried Leah. That's where I wish to be buried. And in fact, his sons, the Bible records, bring him from Egypt and bury him, and thereby closing the sepulcher. The last to be buried there is Jacob. That is why this place is considered the second holiest site for the Jewish people. The first is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
Right now we're in Tel Hebron. That's the archaeological part of the story of Hebron. When you scratch the surface, literally scratch the surface, you will find remnants of the Jewish people from hundreds of years ago to thousands of years ago to already 3,000 years ago in the First Temple period. Here in Tel Hebron, we have found a lot of ritual baths, olive presses, and even kilns to make pottery and ceramics. So we found a lot of Jewish life here. One of the things that has proven our presence here are bulai, or seals, that we have found here that say Lamelech Hebron, to the king in Hebron. These were apparently storehouses for the Davidic dynasty here in Hebron, and we have their seals. The seals are written in Arabic? No. Ugaritic? No. Persian? No. What language? Hebrew. Oh my God. The Jewish people are still speaking the same language that we spoke 3,000 years ago in this very place. And you can see the ancient staircase that existed already in the time of Abraham. This is pre-Jewish. This is Canaanite, okay? These are folks that lived here, Canaanites, and you could see the staircase that leads up to the gate of the city. And in that gate of the city, something took place. If you want to follow along, let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 23. In the story that Abraham negotiates with the Hittites to purchase a plot of land, the Torah spills a lot of ink. And the story is told that Abraham comes to the Hittites. He comes to the gate of the city and he asks to negotiate with Ephron of the Hittite people. Ephron stands up and they negotiate. The negotiations for a plot of land that Ephron owns. And Abraham does it Middle East style, nice and slow. He bows to the people of the land. He thanks them. And he says, if it's in your heart to help me, please give me the plot of land, which I want to put a tomb in, that Ephron owns, and I want to pay full price for it. And Ephron says, I have given it to you as a present. It's a present from me to you. In other words, I am now honoring Abraham because I myself am a very important person, and everybody can see that now Ephron is an important guy. He's offering a gift to Abraham, who's a prince of God amongst them, says the Bible. Well, Abraham says, that's very nice of you, and he bows and he prostrates and he thanks Ephron, but he says, thank you, but no thank you. I want to pay full price. And that's because he wanted to own it in perpetuity and not have anybody tell him that, well, come on, it was given to you as a gift, but it wasn't really given to you. It's still ours. He wanted to own it outright. And so it's not just God gave me, it's not just this guy gave me a present, it's business, baby. And that's what he wanted to make sure happens. In the end, Ephron says, 400 silver weight. What's that between friends? What's that between me and you? And so Abraham weighs out the silver weight and he hands it over in front of everybody, in front of the witnesses, as a business transaction, and he receives the ownership and the deed for that piece of property, and he proceeds to bury his beloved wife Sarah. That's a lot of ink spilled on this story. What's it there for? Well, this was the first purchase of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. This was Abraham taking an act and teaching us for generations how important this place is, how much money he was willing to put down, how much self-sacrifice. And also he taught us about love, what it is to respect a woman, to give that love and to honor her. So that happened in Abrahamic times, 3,800 years ago. Later, King David is going to rule here. And there's a first temple city. After that, the first temple is destroyed, yet the Jewish people with their tenacity come back. And there's a second temple city. And here we could see in the second temple city, beautiful, huge ritual baths. But when this was found, it was proven without a shadow of a doubt that there existed here a second temple city. Nobody else had ritual baths. When we put it all together, we see Abraham in the period of the forefathers and mothers. And later, the first temple city in King David, and those bulai that show the Davidic dynasty and the concern that the kings of Jerusalem and Israel had for this area, for storehouses, for wheat, for other things. We found proof of that. That's archaeology. And then finally, second temple city, that we see in its full splendor and glory, how they worked here, how they produced here, and how they lived here and made a living here in order to continue their hold on this ancient and biblical city and beautiful city, Hebron. Well, we're at one of my favorite places in Hebron, and that says a lot because I love this place so much. It's the tomb of Ruth and Yishai. That's my name also, Yishai. In English, it's called Jesse. Don't be calling me Jesse. Ruth, of course, from the book of Ruth. What an amazing heroine Ruth was. She loved Naomi. She joined her in her trek back to her people. She was a Moabitess. She didn't fit. She didn't look right. She wasn't part of the society, but she said, I'm going to cleave unto you, Naomi, and your God is my God, and your nation is my nation. And I want to be here with you. And she became the great-grandmother of King David. That's how she was rewarded for being part of the Jewish story, wanting to be part of the Bible. What a lesson that is for all of us, because when you bless Israel and you say, I want to be part of it in any way, and then you get blessed right back by God, who says, you're blessing my people, I'm blessing you right back. Yishai, Jesse, the father of King David. They're buried here in Hebron. This site has a lot of different structures. We have a Byzantine structure that's 1,500 years ago. We have a Crusader structure that's maybe 1,000 years ago. And we have all kinds of different periods that are here. And in the last few years, we have really put an effort to beautify this site. Not only is it now holy, but now it also feels holy, it looks holy, and it's become a place, the second site in Hebron. Now, the reason the site is important is not just because of those tombs, but also because this is where the original biblical cities stood, here on the mountain area called Tel Hebron, the mountain of Hebron. And it's here that the biblical cities of the first temple and the second temple stood. This is where King David ruled. Probably somewhere around this site is where King David had his first castle. The beautification process has been one of my greatest joys because you've taken a place that has been forgotten and derelict, make it come to life again. And isn't that really what Israel's all about? Coming back to the biblical heartland, making it live again, making those forgotten places alive again. And it's just like the biblical verse, which tells us that God says, I will rebuild those destroyed houses. I will rebuild the ruins. And indeed, God is rebuilding it through the advent of the Jewish people back in the land of Israel. And it's here that we remember King David. From here, we look out at the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs, which is in the valley. Soon, we're going to have amazing archaeology here that's going to rival some of the world's best archaeology, because here we're going to find a second temple city, a first temple city, and even a Canaanite city, all buried underneath the ground. Today, this site has in it rooms and an ancient synagogue, all rebuilt with craftsmanship, with love, and it's become a place that people come to have their life cycles in these holy places. Here we are at the Avram Avinu Synagogue. This is the flagship of a whole neighborhood called the Avram Avinu neighborhood. Avram Avinu is Hebrew for Abraham, our forefather. And this synagogue was actually built in 1540. 1540. Why is that important? Some people think that Israel starts in 1948, but that is just simply incorrect. The truth is that the Jewish people in this round are in our third Commonwealth. We had a first temple here 3,000 years ago, a second temple here 2,000 years ago, and now we're in the era of the third temple. The Jewish people have lived in this land, and especially in places like Hebron, in perpetuity. And in the year 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But also what happened in that year is that the Jews were evicted from Spain. And when they were evicted from Spain, they searched for a new home. Where's that home going to be? Well, they went to North Africa, to Tunis and Morocco. And they also went through Europe and to places like Poland, and they got stuck there. But some Jews made it all the way to Hebron. And in 1540, there was 1,000 new Jews who met some of the old Jews that were living there. Because they're Jews that have been living here without break, successively, throughout all times. We have records of them. As visitors visited Hebron, they said, and there's a Jewish community there. So this synagogue was built in 1540. Why did they need a synagogue? Couldn't they just go pray at the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs? Well, in the year 1267, Jews were kicked out by the Muslims from the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs, and the Jews were not allowed to pray inside of the tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs, only outside. So they needed a structure. In 1540, they built this. That's about 400 years ago. That's almost 500 years ago, right? We have Torah scrolls here that are written 400 years ago that came from Baghdad. Very ancient Torah scrolls. This is what served the Jewish community as the central place, this beautiful synagogue. The problem was with this beautiful synagogue is that it fell under attack itself. In the year 1929, a jihadist riot led by a very bad man by the name of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, raged through the town. This jihadist riot ended up murdering 67 Jews in the same style that we saw on October 7th. Brutal, bloody, inhumane. This synagogue was fully destroyed. Its walls were torn down, everything was burnt, everything was ripped apart, and we could barely identify it. But when the Jewish people returned to Hebron after the Six-Day War in 1967, we returned and found this synagogue. It was broken, it was destroyed. And we started digging it up, and we found its pillars. And then we rebuilt it, and we rebuilt it exactly to spec of what it was like in 1540. We just made the women's section a little bit bigger. We also were able to bring back the 2 Torah scrolls that were very ancient. What happened was in 1929, during those riots, there was 2 Jews who risked their life and ran into the synagogue and saved the 2 ancient Torah scrolls. That was in 1929. 50 years later, in 1979, those 2 young men had the merit to bring back those 2 Torah scrolls and put them back into the Ark. Because they protected them and they had the merit to live a long life and to place them back in. Those Torah scrolls are still used today in the synagogue and still cared for. The synagogue is built in the Spanish Moorish style. It's very beautiful, it's very spiritual, and there are many legends associated with the synagogue, including that one time during a plague, everybody left town except for 9 men. They didn't have a quorum for the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, and suddenly a man joins them. And he helped them pray that Yom Kippur prayer. And later they understood that that man was Abraham, who came himself to pray and to join and make that 10 men quorum that was necessary for prayer. From that day on, the synagogue was called the Avram Avinu Synagogue, Abraham, our forefather. And this whole neighborhood developed and named after the synagogue and named after the patriarch, Abraham. That's what Hebron is all about, and so that's what the synagogue is all about. When you come into the synagogue, you just know that Jewish people are an ancient people in this land and hold on to their traditions through thick and thin. When you come in, open up that ark, see those ancient Torah scrolls, and connect to the heroism, the self-sacrifice, the tenacity, and the eternity of Israel.
I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
We have now arrived at a very special building called Beit Hadassah. Maybe you've heard of this term Hadassah. It's associated with hospitals. Well, this one as well is associated with hospitals. In the late 1800s, the Jewish community built a hospital, a care center, a health clinic in order to help both Arabs and Jews in Hebron. This was a charitable idea to have a health clinic so that everybody can live a better life here. And indeed, it functioned as a health clinic for everybody for many years. After the 1929 riots, it was taken away from the Jewish people. The British and Jordanians and then other Arabs controlled this building. Today, it's a very iconic building, and it has in it apartments. It's called Beit Hadassah. Everybody visits it because it's so beautiful, so interesting. It's got this lattice work with the Jewish star, but also at the bottom floor, it's got a museum. The museum is a very special site. It tries very hard to condense 3,500 years of Jewish history into a few rooms. And it's not easy to do so. So the first room deals with the biblical account of Hebron. The second room deals with the thousands of years of continuous Jewish presence in Hebron. The third room, however, deals with the very painful topic of the 1929 riots and how the Jewish community was destroyed. The fourth and fifth room deal with the return and how the Jewish people have yearned to come back to this place, and how through settlement, political action, pushing back, being tough, through the works of the army and the police, the Jewish people have been able to get a foothold in this ancestral city. The museum is a special place because it gives you a total picture of the history of Hebron, okay? There is a room there that is a little bit painful, but that's the story of the Jewish people, isn't it? Within the great history of the Jewish people and continuous survival, there's also Holocaust. And that's what happened here in Hebron in 1929. But the rest is about inspiration, about the Bible, about connectivity, and about the tenacity of the Jewish people to hold on to this place. From Abraham's purchase to King David's rule, to hundreds of years of living under various rules of Crusaders and Byzantines and Muslims, to the period that we're in today, where we're continuing to fight and to beautify this city. The museum gives you a bird's eye view of Jewish history and also other peoples who have had a hand in the story of Hebron, and it gives you a chance to connect. At the end of your visit to the museum, get some snacks at our little cafe, or get some souvenirs that will remind you about your visit to Hebron.
Welcome to St. Peter on Gallicantu, the most authentic site for the sufferings of Jesus here in Jerusalem.
Thank you for watching, and make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and land of the Bible.